The conversation around the Philadelphia Eagles heading into 2026 is no longer just about talent, schemes, or draft position. It's about pressure, real pressure. Inside the building, outside the building, and especially from the fan base that watched a roster full of ability fail to meet expectations in 2025. When you look at what came out of last season, one thing becomes very clear. The Eagles are entering a year where nothing is guaranteed anymore. Not for the head coach, and not even for the franchise quarterback. Nick Sirianni is not some random coach fighting for relevance. This is a Super Bowl winning head coach who earned a contract extension not long ago. But football doesn't care about yesterday. The Eagles underperformed badly in 2025 relative to how talented the roster actually is. Jeffrey Lurie has always been an owner who recognizes when a team is wasting its potential, and history already showed that Sirianni has been closer to the edge before than many fans realize. The idea that he is safe disappears quickly if the same kind of struggles show up again. If this team looks flat, inconsistent, or confused like it did too often last season, the conversation around Sirianni changes fast. And then there's Jalen Hurts. This is where it gets uncomfortable for a lot of fans. Hurts is a Super Bowl MVP, a leader, and a face of the franchise. But 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most important seasons of his career. He is once again working with a new offensive coordinator, which has become a recurring theme instead of stability. In the past, when Hurts has been questioned, he responded. He rarely strings together two disappointing seasons by his own standards. That's what makes this year so important. If he doesn't bounce back, the Eagles are forced to at least think about the future differently, even if nobody wants to say that out loud right now. The organization knows the roster is too talented to drift. That's why so much attention is also on the defensive side, especially Vic Fangio. There is optimism that Fangio stays, but at the same time, there's an understanding that his career is closer to the end than the beginning. Internally, the Eagles already have to think about what happens next. They could pursue someone in a future offseason, promote from within, or even bring in someone to learn under Fangio while he's still here. Names like Jonathan Gannon and Jim Schwartz came up in discussions because of their history with the team. Gannon runs a similar system, even if his past in Philadelphia still frustrates fans. Schwartz, meanwhile, helped win Super Bowl 52 and has proven with Cleveland that he can build an elite defense when given the right pieces. The key point for fans to understand is this. The Eagles don't want to replace Fangio while also overhauling the offense at the same time. With changes already happening under Sean Mannion and Josh Grizzard on offense, losing Fangio would stack instability on top of instability. That's how good teams slide into chaos quickly. The front office is clearly aware of that balance and is watching everything closely. What makes this entire situation more intense is the mindset inside the locker room. Jalen Hurts' Super Bowl ring ceremony told a story by itself. While teammates proudly put their rings on, Hurts kept his in the box. The side of the ring literally says MVP, but his message was simple. He already moved on to the next year. That mentality is powerful, but it also comes with expectations. Leaders who think like that are expected to deliver when the spotlight gets hotter. So when you connect all of this, you see a franchise at a crossroads. Not rebuilding, not collapsing, but recalibrating under pressure. Sirianni has to prove last season was an exception. Hurts has to show he's still ascending, not leveling off. Fangio's future has to be handled without blowing up the structure of the team. And the Eagles have to do all of it while knowing the margin for error is smaller than it's been in years. This isn't panic. It's accountability season in Philadelphia. And the way 2026 starts could quietly decide what this organization looks like for the next several years. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe the pressure on Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts going into 2026 is justified? Or do you think the Eagles are overreacting to one disappointing season? The pressure doesn't stop at the head coach and the quarterback. It spreads across the entire structure of the Philadelphia Eagles. Because when a team underperforms with this much talent, every layer gets evaluated. Front office decisions, coordinator development, player accountability, and even long-term succession plans all start moving from theory into action.
One area quietly tied to everything is roster construction. The Eagles have built a reputation for maximizing talent, and part of that philosophy has always been connected to the draft. There's already talk about the team reconnecting with familiar pipelines, like the Georgia Bulldogs, a program the Eagles leaned on heavily in 2022 and 2023 before drafting only one player from there since. That doesn't mean anything is locked in, but it does reflect how Philadelphia constantly evaluates where its best developmental returns have come from. When a season disappoints, the answer isn't just coaching, it's also whether the pipeline of young players is still feeding the roster the right way. At the same time, continuity matters more than people admit. Jalen Hurts is heading into another year with a different offensive voice. That's not ideal for any quarterback, let alone one who already carries the weight of franchise expectations. Every coordinator brings different terminology, timing, structure, and rhythm. Hurts has proven he can adapt, but adaptation isn't the same as stability. The Eagles are basically asking him to be both the emotional leader and the system translator at the same time. That's hard, and that's why the 2026 season isn't just about performance, it's about command. Can Hurts fully own the offense again the way he did when everything was clicking? And when fans talk about pressure, they usually mean public pressure. But inside the building, the pressure is more precise. Jeffrey Lurie doesn't operate emotionally, he operates strategically. He can see when a roster is good enough to contend and when results don't match that reality. The Eagles were not short on talent in 2025. That's the part that makes the underperformance sting. When a bad team struggles, it's expected. When a strong team struggles, it forces uncomfortable internal questions. Are players executing? Are coaches teaching? Is the scheme maximizing strengths? Or is the system slowly drifting away from what made the team dangerous in the first place? That's also why Vic Fangio's situation matters more than just retirement rumors. Fangio represents structure, identity, and defensive clarity. His career speaks for itself, and the Eagles understand that replacing someone like that isn't about finding another name, it's about protecting the philosophy. The team already knows they'll eventually need a successor, whether it's someone groomed internally or an experienced voice from outside. But timing is everything. Losing Fangio while also reshaping the offense would create two moving targets at once, and that's how competitive windows quietly shrink. What's interesting is that the Eagles are still very much in a winning posture. This isn't a rebuild conversation, it's a correction conversation. Jalen Hurts already showed the mentality of a champion when he talked about moving on immediately after receiving his Super Bowl ring. The ring even has MVP engraved for him, yet he didn't wear it. That tells you something about how he views himself. Not finished, not satisfied, not sentimental. But that mentality only holds value if the on-field product reflects it. Leadership is proven in response seasons, not celebration seasons. Nick Sirianni is in a similar position mentally. He's already proven he can take a team to the top. Now he has to prove he can stabilize a team after disappointment. That's a different type of coaching. It's not about hype. It's about discipline, structure, and eliminating the small issues that snowball into big losses. Sirianni doesn't need to reinvent the Eagles. He needs to sharpen them again. So when fans look at 2026, they shouldn't just see a schedule or a draft board. They should see a year that defines direction. Either the Eagles reassert who they are, with Hurts leading confidently, Sirianni commanding the locker room, and Fangio anchoring the defense, or the organization slowly starts preparing for bigger changes than anyone is openly talking about right now. That's why this season feels different. Not dramatic, not desperate, just decisive. And even beyond the big names, the ripple effect of this situation touches every corner of the roster. When a franchise quarterback and a head coach are under evaluation, every player in the building feels it. Veterans understand that windows don't stay open forever, and younger players realize opportunities come faster when the organization demands urgency. That's what's happening in Philadelphia right now. The Eagles aren't tearing anything down, but they are clearly tightening everything up. One thing fans sometimes miss is how much expectations change behavior. After winning a Super Bowl and carrying that momentum, the Eagles became a target every single week. Opponents didn't see Philly as a team to survive anymore, they saw them as a team to attack. In 2025, that showed. Defensive coordinators adjusted to Hurts. Offenses challenged Fangio's unit differently. Situations that used to feel comfortable suddenly became tests. And when the Eagles didn't respond consistently, the season drifted instead of surged. That's why 2026 isn't just about talent on paper. It's about edge. The Eagles at their best play with controlled aggression. Hurts running the offense with confidence, the defense dictating instead of reacting, and the coaching staff staying ahead of tendencies instead of chasing them. When that edge slips, even slightly, the difference between dominating and surviving becomes obvious. For Hurts specifically, the conversation around him this year is deeper than stats. It's about identity. At his peak, he's not just executing plays, he's commanding the entire flow of the game. He controls tempo, protection, decision-making, and emotional tone. With another new offensive structure around him, the challenge becomes ownership, not learning the offense, but owning it. The Eagles don't need Hurts to adjust. They need him to impose. For Sirianni, leadership becomes quieter but stronger. After disappointment, players don't respond to slogans, they respond to consistency. Sirianni's job in 2026 is to remove noise, simplify responsibility, and rebuild trust in execution. The Eagles already know how to win. The issue is remembering how to do it together when adversity hits instead of waiting for momentum to save them. And defensively, Fangio's presence still shapes the personality of the team. His system isn't flashy, but it's disciplined. It asks players to be smart, patient, and technically sound. When it works, quarterbacks get uncomfortable without realizing why. The Eagles understand that stability on that side of the ball protects everything else. Offense plays freer when defense controls games. That's why Fangio's future is tied directly to how competitive the Eagles stay at the top level. So the real story heading into 2026 is not fear, it's responsibility. Everyone in that building knows the roster is good enough. That makes excuses disappear. The Eagles aren't searching for relevance, they're defending it, and that's a very different mindset. If this team locks back into its identity, Philadelphia stays in the championship conversation. If it doesn't, the questions around Hurts, Sirianni, and even the long-term structure of the franchise grow louder instead of quieter. And there's another layer to this that fans don't always connect right away: perception around the league. The Philadelphia Eagles are no longer viewed as a surprise contender. They're viewed as a standard. When you reach the top, every opponent studies you differently. Every mistake gets copied, attacked, and exploited faster. In 2025, some of what hurt the Eagles wasn't lack of effort, it was predictability in key moments. Situations where the Eagles used to dictate terms started flipping, and suddenly Philly was reacting instead of forcing the issue. That's why this upcoming stretch matters so much for Hurts mentally. Defensive coordinators aren't asking anymore, how do we survive Jalen Hurts? They're asking, how do we make him uncomfortable? They test protections, disguise coverage, and force quicker decisions. The answer for Hurts isn't just athleticism or toughness, it's anticipation and command. The great quarterbacks evolve from playmakers into problem solvers. Hurts has already shown pieces of that evolution, but 2026 is where it has to become permanent, not situational. You also can't ignore how leadership changes when expectations rise. When you're climbing, leadership is loud. When you're defending, leadership becomes precise. Hurts setting the tone, Sirianni controlling the environment, Fangio anchoring the defense, all of that has to align week after week. Championship teams aren't emotional, they're reliable. They win ugly, they survive bad stretches, and they don't let one mistake become a pattern. That's where the Eagles slipped in 2025. Not catastrophically, but consistently enough to change outcomes. Inside the locker room, players feel that shift before fans do. Veterans understand that front offices don't wait forever. Young players understand that opportunity grows when urgency rises. That creates competition in practice, in meetings, in preparation. The Eagles don't need chaos. They need sharpened habits, cleaner communication, faster adjustments,